So I want to just share with you a couple of things. One of the things that people are not realizing, and there's some obvious things that we're so mesmerized and blinded now we don't even see. There used to be a time when people would go outside and sit on a cliff and watch the stars, and they just knew that the earth was round. They didn't question, they didn't think, oh, somehow the earth was flat. And how did they know that? Somehow or another, we've been blinded to this obviousness that we've somehow we're no longer able to even see some obvious things. One, the sun comes up in the morning and it goes down in the evening, in the opposite side of the heavens. And 12 hours later, it comes back up in the morning in the same place. Now, if you weren't steeped in some kind of ignoramus, mesmerism, and some sort of mind control to be thinking that somehow that means that the earth is flat, you would see that it's impossible for the earth to be flat. Because if you're on a flat plane and the sun's going from east to west, and it's going from east to west every time you see it, it never goes back west again. It goes east to west in a straight line and goes down over the horizon and comes back up in the east again. It has to be going around a round globe. And I know some of you think, no. It's just that the earth is flat and it's a long, long ways and it goes out of sight and then it goes back around, on the flat top and comes back around like a circle. Not around the other side, but just around the flat top like a cork. And so you're just not seeing that. It goes beyond. Well, no, stop. You gotta realize that you're deceiving yourself. Because if we know that the sun is shining in China on the opposite, we call it the opposite side of the earth, but all right, so let's say we're in America and the sun's up and it's shining. Okay, 12 hours later, we're sleeping and it's dark. You can call somebody on the phone in China and they'll say, yeah, there's a sun over here now. Okay, so we know that it's not that far from here to China. You can get on a boat or a plane and get there, pretty quickly. We know that when you're in China, you can get on a boat or a plane and go east. You don't have to come west and come back to the west. You can get on a boat or a plane and go east from China, and you still going directly east, come back around to America again. All right? So now, in your mind, you would normally and logically understand that it's a circle. You go around the earth. So the fact that people talked about going and sailing around the earth for thousands of years, yes, in stories, biblical stories and ancient stories that were written before Christ, they talked about sailing around the world and the sun setting. In fact, the devil's name is Set because he's the light setting, which means to go down. The fact that Jesus' other name is Horus, or that's the word we have today, horizon, because there is a horizon that the sun comes up in the east and down. And all of this, look, I don't know how much or how long we need to spend on telling you these kinds of things. They used to be obvious that people weren't, people talk about airplanes, that, well, why do airplanes, when you put them on autopilot, if the earth has curvature, why don't they just sail right on off the earth and into space? Well, we've got gravity, all right? But what's happening is the plane is designed to keep that aeroplane at a certain altitude. So that means a certain distance between the plane and the ground. So, yeah, that's why they don't nosedive into the earth or fly off into space. Because they're keeping a certain altitude. Now, they have little meters in the airplane, an altimeter that keeps the altitude, and the plane will adjust the rudders and so forth to keep that altitude. It's not some kind of rocket scientist. Anybody could know this, and yet people keep perpetuating this ignorance and telling people, well, what about airplanes? And then so many people unsuspecting and not understanding how airplanes fly without, with an altimeter, or how this works. are deceived by your lies, and you're perpetuating these lies. So, in the ancient times, when they saw the sun go down and come up on the opposite side, they just knew that the earth was round. How is it that people just don't know that anymore? Well, most people do. Like I said, only about 2 or 3%, maybe 4 or 5% of the people even believe in this stuff. But they're like zealots running around spreading these weird lies, and little children don't get any education anymore. So they're starting to believe your crap. But listen how you're deceiving people. When the sun goes down, you say, oh, well, it just keeps going over this flat plane, and it's going so far in the distance that we can't see the sun anymore. That's a lie, and you can see and observe with your eyes that that's a lie, because the sun is a great big ball you can see very clearly. But all of a sudden, it goes down and gets close to the horizon, and you can see it go over the horizon, and you can't see it no more, and it gets dark. The only reason it gets dark is because the sun's rays are being blocked. It is a scientific fact that if you put something in between a light source and yourself, you'll be standing in the dark. That's just a fact. So if the sun was let's say it's 10,000 miles away when it's going over the horizon, and you're saying, well, it's just at that point. It's right at that point, it's just going out of the sight of vision. Why? Why at that point does it go from the size of an orange to absolutely nothing? There's no explanation for that. There's no explanation for that. It's not just going further and further and further and further and further and further away. If it were, you would see what would look like a very tiny star in the distance, but you don't. You see nothing. It goes down over the horizon, and the earth then becomes a block or a shield between you and the sun's rays, and it's dark. And I'll be darned, but look behind you, in 12 hours it's going to come up on the other horizon. Now, anybody with any brains and any noggin would normally look at that, and they would just assume the earth is round, since everybody says it's been round for thousands of years, and your very eyes will tell you this. Now, I want to share another point with you. This is another proof that the earth is round. If you stand on the equator, okay, that just means somewhere in the area around the Bahamas or something, right? Okay, you're down there in the equatorial region where it's always nice and sunny and warm. And you're looking towards the North Star. You're looking north at night. And you see all the stars up in the sky. Well, all the stars rotate. You can go back every night and watch this. They all rotate in a specific direction around the pole star. It's called Polaris. All right. Now, turn around and look south, and you'll see that there is another star. They call it the Southern Pole Star, and all the stars in the sky revolve around that at the southern pole. The only possible way that all those little twinkling white stars would be rotating, but at the very north and south poles it doesn't rotate, is if we are on a spinning ball. And that is a fact. There is no way you can get around it. It is an established fact. There is no other possibility but that we are on a spinning ball. Now I want to give another proof for the earth being a spinning round globe real quickly. And this has been done by many people before Christ. People were doing this experiment. People have confirmed this experiment in different parts of the world with different backgrounds, different religious beliefs, in different countries. You can put a stick in the ground and it will cast a shadow. You can measure the shadow. You can go several hundred miles away and put another stick in the ground and measure the shadow of that stick, and you can prove with geometry that the earth has a curvature. Now, I want to also just briefly hit on a few of these other misconceptions and lies that are being thrown around without any regard for their actually being true statements. People are just saying them, okay? For instance, we're going to cover a couple of them. One of them is everybody who believes in this flat earth keep throwing this thing around, and they've convinced everybody. Nobody's even calling you on it, and I don't understand that. But you've like mesmerized so many people by this. But you're always telling everybody, oh well, water always finds level. Well, what about a level, Dave? You that's why you have a little bubble, and the water always finds its level. You can find out how your house foundation is level by using a level. Water always goes level. So if water always finds a level, then how is it that there is a curvature of the earth? Because the ocean would have to be going around and hugging the earth. Well, the answer to that is that the water does not find level. There's not some mysterious force in the universe that says water must find level. Why would water find level? Right? You put water water is fluid. This means it's pliable. It'll take on any form that you put pressure on it to form it in any form. Like, for instance, you can blow up a balloon with air. Does air always find round? No, only it's round. The air takes up an area that's round only because the rubber balloon is holding it in the space of that round area. So it's the air is pliable and it's following the form of the balloon. So you can fill the balloon up with water. Does it find level? No, it simply goes to the sides of the balloon and stops. So there is a thing called gravity. Now, a lot of you will say, well, I don't believe in gravity. Well, I don't care what you believe. Apples fall to the ground. Call it whatever you want. Water falls to the ground. Why? Some mysterious force. You can come up with any theory you want as to why it does that. Okay, but water and leaves and rocks and everything falls to the ground. Now, when it does that, which direction is the water going? Well, it's going not down. The earth is round. It's going towards the center of the earth. And that's a force that's applied equally around the globe on all sides. It holds everybody on the earth. People in China are held to the earth just like people in America on the other side of the world. And we're all being held on the outside, just like when the water is in space and it starts falling, equilibrium, and it turns and it forms a sphere. Right? It doesn't find level, it's a little sphere. I mean, the little raindrop's not a square or a little flat disc. It's a round sphere. That's just natural. Why? Because there are forces equally being applied to that drop of water on all sides. It's suspended in air, so it's equilibrium. And so there's this particular law that says that when you have mass, then lighter substances will be attracted to that mass. The greater the mass, the greater the gravity or the pull. Some people want to call that density. What that means is that there's a lot of atoms with a lot of electrons, jammed up in a smaller space, and that's causing more sort of magnetism because it's more mass or it's a dense conglomeration of particles that are held together. They attract each other, and the heavier particles go to the center. Why? Because they have more electrons. So there's more mass. You can understand it, as I said, you can understand that as density, right? There's just more little electrons and it's just heavier because there's more mass. And so the mass is in the center and the lighter, the less dense is at the top. So each of these elements are separated by how dense they are. And no matter where you are in the universe, the center, the core, is where the uranium, plutonium, the heaviest mass is. So when you dig down inside the earth, you find there are metals. But if you go up, you find there is clouds, and then you get up there's ozone and so air and then fluid, like water's on top of the earth, lakes and oceans, and then under that is dirt, and below that is metal and ore and iron in the core and stuff like this. So scientists know this. You wouldn't know it necessarily by looking at the earth. You wouldn't necessarily know about all these things called gold and uranium. And it takes thousands of years to go dig in the earth, and we dig up something and they say, oh, we're going to call that copper, and oh, we're going to call that gold, no, we're going to call that iron. Okay, is it really iron? No, that's the name we gave it. But what we do know is that these things we call metals are hard, they have more mass, and they tend to be in the bottom. And the things that are lighter, and less mass, we've determined have less magnetism, less charge, less electrons, and they seem to be less dense. You can put your hand through them. They're not solid. Okay, this makes sense to me. All right, so the earth then is not an eternal plane or whatever, and then somehow or another water just finds level for eternity. Then if water was always going to find level, then this deep, huge ocean that's how many, meters down would not be only 24,000 miles. It would just keep squishing down flat, finding level to eternity. But no, it doesn't. We can find it that we keep sailing, we come back around to the same place on the other side of the earth, right back same place on the earth. So it doesn't go in an eternal plane. It would have to be an eternal plane if water found level, if that's just some mysterious force that water has to find level. Then the oceans couldn't be deep. They'd just be a flat little sort of plane of water that would go out as far as you could squish the water into a small plane. If there was some law that said, no, the water can only be squished down to a foot. It'll have to be at least a foot deep. Well, even then, the water would be spread out in a long, flat plane. We say, well, we ran out of water, so I guess at the end of that plane, you'd have to fall off the water edge, right? What would be holding the water up? Well, there must be earth underneath of it. And you'd have to have an endless supply of this earth if it was an infinite plane. If it's not an infinite plane, it would just go out into a plane somewhere. Maybe Earth finds its level too, right? And it just keeps going, and you just keep walking on this Earth in one direction, and eventually we just go off somewhere that no one's ever heard of before. No one's ever sailed there. No one's ever flown there. And I know a lot of you say, oh yeah, people have never been allowed to get on an airplane and fly across the North Pole or South Pole. It's off limits, so therefore we don't know. Maybe it could go forever. But why is there cold there? There's no explanation for there being cold at the North and South Pole, except for the fact that the Earth is a sphere, and the sun's light doesn't, because of refraction, doesn't strike the Earth at the poles straight on like it does at the equator, and therefore it's colder because of the angle of the light. I mean, we have all this figured out. But you flat earthers know so much better. You've got this all figured out. Well, it's just flat. That's the answer. Well, that doesn't explain anything. The globe explains everything. Even if you don't know that it does, it does. So, water doesn't find level. It simply conforms to whatever pressure is applied to it. And gravity is pushing on all sides of the earth, keeping the water on the earth. Okay, the round earth. Now, I see that we're, over an hour now, and so I'm going to bring this to a close. I've covered 3 of the main things that people keep repeating all the time. If the earth was round, an airplane on autopilot would fly off the earth. No, it has a way to keep the altitude and remain at that altitude. 2, water finds level. That's not true. That's not a mysterious force that is in the universe that causes all the water to find level. That's not true. The truth is that water is fluid. It's pliable. It will form into whatever shape, whatever pressure is being applied to it causes it to form into. And so gravity is causing the waters in the oceans to form a blanket around the round earth. Now, Another one, real quickly, that I hear a lot of people saying is that if you were on a Earth that was speeding through the universe at thousands of miles an hour, how is it that the water didn't just fly off the Earth? Well, the same reason why you could be in an airplane traveling 300 miles an hour and have a cup of tea. The same reason that you could be on a train at 70 miles an hour and drink a glass of water and sit in a chair and read a newspaper. Or in a car at 70 miles an hour drinking a cup of coffee, reading a newspaper. And you want to know something, guys? I think that 99% of the people in this world are so smart, they know that that's not true. Who is it then that just keeps spouting all this crap, like coming on my channel saying, day. Well, most of them are paid to disrupt and to mislead, and it's being done by someone with an agenda. Because real people aren't that stupid to try to would ask a question as how in the world could the water stay on the earth if we're traveling? They have all drank a glass of water or a cup of tea when they're on an airplane or a train. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I don't know how many times I've told people about the stars all going around Polaris, the North Pole in the northern hemisphere, and all the stars going around the southern pole in the southern hemisphere, and that proves that the earth is a ball. And people just, they don't say a word. They just ignore it and go right on to, yeah, but water always finds its level. That's not true, and you're a liar. And if you ever say that again, after I just explained to you, if you didn't know why that is a lie, then you are just willfully lying to people and yourself. So, if anybody wants to comment in the comment box down below, I would appreciate it if you would stick to these 3 or 4 things that we've already covered. I will debate you, not on some frivolous ridiculousness that is not, there's nothing, feelings or, well, I think, my opinion, I don't want to hear that. If you want to try and argue that the earth is flat, you must, in the comment box, address these 3 or 4 things that we just mentioned. 1, if you're standing on the equator looking north, why do all the stars revolve around Polaris? And if you're looking back to the south, why do all the stars in the southern hemisphere rotate and spin around the southern pole star? Number 2, and I just realized there was another point that I wanted to make, and I ain't going to have time to make here, and that's that everybody keeps talking about the curvature of the earth, and they can see further on a body of water than what NASA is saying you should be able to see with their little calculations. Well, if you'll just look it up on Google, you'll see that this has been a particular phenomenon that they have been talking about for thousands of years. It's called refraction. Light refracts. And I did a video on that. So don't just forget to tell people that there is an explanation for that. Or if you don't know that there's an explanation for that, now you do. And before we talk about it, make sure you go and look it up and study that. Don't just keep repeating stuff that you don't know anything about. Go look it up and look at the evidence, and then we can talk about it. Also, there has been many experiments with a stick in the ground that have, through geometry, proven the curvature of the earth. Look it up. Don't just talk about it. Don't just spout some crap out of your mouth that you don't know anything about, but look into it. They've been talking about the earth being around before Christ for thousands of years. Look into it. Familiarize yourself with the facts. And don't just run around telling people lies. And finally, if we're going to discuss this, I want you to explain to me why when the sun goes over the horizon, it doesn't keep going further and further and further and getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But instead, it goes down and it gets dark and then it comes back up the opposite side. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go, guys. Hope you have a wonderful day. May the Lord bless you. We'll see you tomorrow.